Back in 2014, I rode a recently brought back to life 1974 Moto Guzzis 750S as far as you could go by road along the north shore of the St. Lawrence River. At that time the road ended just past the Innu village of Natashquan. If you wanted to go any further up the Côte du Nord, you had to do it by boat. Since then the road's been extended for another 50 kilometers as far as the village of Kegashka. It was time for a road trip, and that seemed a perfect destination. The shortest distance from my house to the end of the road is over 1,600 kilometers. To avoid endless droning along dreary four-lane highways, I took a longer route, avoiding Montreal and Quebec City, by looping north through Le Touque and Saguenay, rejoining the river at St. Simeon. This added a few hundred kilometers of scenic riding to the route. As the observant among you will have already noticed, I wasn't riding one of my Guzzis. For a change, I decided to take the Suzuki Bergman 650 on this trip. Why? The reasons may become clear as we proceed on the journey. You may also have noticed a couple of covered bridges and some running water. These were both to become a regular theme throughout the trip. The ride up to Le Touque and then on to Lac Saint-Jean and Saguenay is classic Quebec. Plenty of trees and plenty of water, with only the very occasional village like this one at Saint François de Sales to change the scene. Eventually the road meets Lac Saint-Jean. This huge shallow lake, the third largest in Quebec, is 44 kilometers long and 24 kilometers wide. In the summer the water heats up, releasing its heat slowly and delaying frost as fall progresses, creating a microclimate that allows for productive agriculture unusual for this far north. The road through the mountains south of Saguenay and down to the St. Lawrence coast to St. Simeon was a joy undiminished by the overcast skies. Forest-covered hills, a gently curving road, little traffic, and everywhere small streams and rivers. It was a short run along the coast from St. Simeon to the ferry at Tadoussac, and I was lucky to arrive and ride onto the ferry with no waiting at all. I've done this crossing before, so knew to look out for whales and belugas, but none were showing themselves this day. Highway 138 closely follows the coast for almost its whole length, so while we head up to my end point for the evening at Godbout, about 650 kilometers from Le Touque, I'll tell you why I chose the Bergman. This isn't your grandpa's mobility scooter, it's a rocket. Its computer-controlled CVT transmission is so skillfully executed that it's always operating at peak torque. It's a rare vehicle that can beat it from the line. As Ryan F9 said in his video review, it feels as though it has a much larger engine, as if its 650cc 8-valve double overhead cam liquid-cooled engine wasn't enough already. It's a machine that'll happily cruise on the highway all day at 130 kph, or 80 miles an hour, and easily exceed the magic ton. Not that I was interested in racing what little traffic there was. I was happy to roll along in comfort behind the bodywork and screen, with the heated grips and heated seat warming my body. I know it doesn't look too cold, but there was a cool breeze off the water, so I stopped often whenever the scenery caught my eye. The municipal campground at Godbout was still closed for the season, so I tucked myself in close by and, after watching the ducks on the river for a while, had a quiet and pleasant night. Packing up in the morning is always a chore, and you may be wondering, how is he going to be able to get all that stuff on the bike when he doesn't even have any panniers? Which brings me back to one of the many reasons these big maxi scooters are such wonderful touring companions. Beneath the seat is a cavernous space. First, my sleeping bag. Then, my tent. Thirdly, my camper mat. Yeah, 3, not 4, Nick. And lastly, my little military blanket for a little extra warmth. All fit in nicely under the seat. Then the seat goes down and locks. Not long after I started in the morning, I passed through a recent forest fire burn area before stopping for a brief break along the shore. Nothing quite like having the whole beach to yourself. Septiel is the last town of any size along the North Shore. From Septiel, it's over 400 kilometers to the end of the road. And while there are communities along the way, Mingen, Havre Saint-Pierre, Bay Johan Beats, if you're looking for fine dining or a part for your Ducati, you'll be out of luck. It's not that it's the third world, it's just that these communities have other fish to fry, quite literally, as one of their primary activities is commercial fishing. And it's wise to fill up with fuel at every opportunity. Many communities don't have a gas pump, and even where they do, they keep their own hours. Carrying a few extra litres is cheap insurance. There may not be many gas pumps, but every little creek or river seems to cascade down to the main river in a scenic torrent. I'd stopped to look at one rather minor falls when I was redirected to this rather more impressive rapids. Although the changes are gradual, once well past Havre Saint-Pierre, there's a general flattening out of the landscape. We've left the high hills and shoreline rocks behind for a world of forested sand plains and massive raised peat bogs with countless small ponds. I remember being struck by the strangeness of this landscape when I'd ridden this way before. It still struck me as strange, and I still loved it. The village of Bay Johan Beats, population 84, lies at the mouth of the Piashti River. On the previous trip I'd stopped at the gas station and had an amusing and enjoyable exchange with a couple of teenagers, neither of whom were comfortable with English, and my French is non-existent. Nevertheless, with good humour and plenty of miming, we struggled through. Once again the landscape changed, with low rocky barrens, small patches of spruce and more bogs. I was getting close to Natashquan on the former end of the road now, when suddenly this guy appeared. I have a soft spot for porcupines. Sometimes they talk to themselves as they waddle along. They're never in much of a hurry because, well, they're well armed. Natashquan's a tidy little place, and remembering my rule to always top up whenever I could, I swung into this service station. Regular or diesel? Them's your options. Just beyond Natashquan is the Innu village of Natashquan. I've no idea whether I'm pronouncing either of them correctly, but soon I was on the last and new stretch of road, heading for Kegashka. For once I called ahead, grabbing the last available room in the delightful Bryan Inn. After a restful night, I rode along the shore road to the harbour and the end of the village. This was as far as the road goes, and without much to retain my attention, there wasn't much alternative but to head back down the road again. On the way up, I'd been focused on getting to Kegashka, but I'd noticed there'd been a few places that warranted a look, which I'd flashed by without stopping. This time, I decided to stop. I'd been intending to camp in Godbout, about the same spot I'd used before. But before I could set up camp, some guys from Maine asked me if I'd like to join them at their campsite just along the river. It was a fabulous spot, and they were delightful company. It was a great way to end a long day. Stay tuned for part 2, where I take a boat, see more bridges, and encounter some wildlife. Please like, subscribe, share, etc. and take a look at my books on Amazon and Audible. Just search for Nick Adams Motorcycle. Thanks for watching.